Hello YouTube, I'm Nye from Finale Guitar, Sheffield's friendliest guitar shop, and you're watching Folk Friend, your one-stop shop for Celtic backing guitar. This video is my top 5 tips for complete beginners to the world of Celtic guitar, which encompasses, as far as I'm concerned, Welsh music, Scottish music, and most importantly, the bulk of it, Irish music. So, tip number 1 is when you're first starting out, it's very important to get the position of your guitar just right and get used to the right way to strum and hold your plectrum. So the best position is sit with your feet firmly planted on the floor, put your guitar on your left leg, and then you want your right arm to just nicely curve around the body of the guitar here so that your elbow is just hooked over like that. And that way, when you can strum from the elbow down with a nice soft supple wrist like the brushes of a paintbrush. And that will hopefully give you nice smooth sounding strumming patterns. The neck of the guitar wants to be pointed just very slightly upwards from being horizontal. And that way you'll be able to put your thumb on the back of the neck like that, so that your left wrist, or your right wrist if you're left-handed, is just pulling away from your body slightly to leave a nice gap between your hand and the neck of the guitar. If you imagine that your wristwatch, I'm not wearing one, but imagine that I am, has a bit of string tied on it and somebody over there is pulling it that way, that kind of movement is what you're aiming for. You want your wrist to be out like that a little way, so that your fingers can be curled over the tops of the strings, a nice bend in the middle of your fingers so that the tips of those fingers are pushing down on the strings and fretting the chords. As for holding the plectrum, if you put your thumb directly across the front like that, so that the point of the plectrum is pointing towards the floor and your thumb is perpendicular to the floor, you want your index finger to point the opposite direction to the thumb on the back like that. That is the best way to hold the plectrum because that enables you to switch between picking and strumming with plenty of control. Don't do what I did and learn to hold it like a pen because you'll only regret it later, even though it seems easier to start with. It's much better to do it with one finger like that. I like to keep my fingers straightened when I'm picking, and I like to curl them round when I'm strumming. One other quick thing on tip number 1 as well is experiment with different thicknesses of plectrum. You'll find all sorts of different gauges. I like to sit somewhere in the middle. This is a 0.6mm celluloid. They're very cheap and cheerful, these. They are the ones I like the best. I find that thicker plectrums mean you have to hit the strings a lot harder, so you haven't got as much dynamic range. And thinner plectrums, I find it very difficult to play with because you move your hand and a little while after you've moved, the plectrum twangs the string, and I really don't like that feeling. I also find them a bit clicky, but they are very popular with a lot of players, and you may have a different style to me. So experiment with as many different thicknesses of plectrums when you're starting out learning your strumming patterns, and see which ones you find the easiest to play with. Tip number 2 is before you even get hold of a guitar, you can actually start training your ears, and ear training is the most important thing that you'll ever do for becoming a great Celtic backing guitarist. The way that you can start doing that is by listening to as much folk music as you can and listening to it analytically, asking yourself things like, is this tune major, minor or mixolydian? A major tune's going to be one that's bright and cheery. A minor one's going to be one that's dark and miserable. Etc. A mixolydian one is one that's bright and cheery but also a little bit cheeky. And those are the 3 main types of tunes that you're going to really need to recognise in order to be able to get the right chords on your guitar. So you can start listening out for those 3 features, and you can also start listening out for the rhythms in tunes. So learning to recognise jigs and reels, which are the 2 main types, along with hornpipes, polkas and slip jigs, and then the few other rhythms like waltzes and things like that that crop up occasionally in Celtic music. If you want loads of guides to all of the main rhythms, the strumming patterns and the ear training, then go and visit folkfriend.co.uk, click on the videos page, they're all organised there by sections, go and have a look at ear training and go and have a look at strumming patterns, and you'll find loads of great guides for those. Tip number 3. Once you have got your guitar back, then play along with as many recordings of other musicians as you can, and once this lockdown ends and we're back to normal and there's some sessions going on, go and play with your friends as much as you can, play with other musicians as much as you can, go to sessions, just play with as many people as possible. because you're going to pick up way more by playing along with people and having interesting ideas on the spur of the moment when you're under pressure or you've had a few or whatever, than you will by just learning things by rote off the internet. As well, if you play quietly in a session, you're never going to offend anybody. That if they can't hear you playing mistakes, they don't know you're playing mistakes, and you're never going to bother them. Just don't go in there all guns blazing, slamming your irrelevant chords really loudly, because that'll drive everybody nuts. Finally, if you meet another musician, butter them up a bit, say nice things about their playing, and they will deluge you with free tips and advice. And most of it will probably be helpful and useful and help you learn faster. So go and play with other people as much as you can. Tip number 4 is not exactly a tip, but more a list of the first things that you should concentrate on learning before you try and progress on to anything else. So the things are in order. Ear training, most important thing you'll ever do. Recognising the 3 main types of tunes, major E1s, minor E1s, mixed Lydian E1s. Recognising the main rhythms. And then once you've got your ear training down and you're starting to get the hang of spotting this is a jig in D major, for example, then what you want to do after that is learn the 3 main chords for each of the major keys. So for the main key, which is G, G, C and D are your main chords. For D, also very common, D, G and A are your main chords. And for A major, A, D and E are your main chords. And just get used to switching between those 3 for the key that you're in at speed. Then you can practice switching between those groups within a strumming pattern so that you get used to practicing patterns and changes together. Once you've got the main couple of rhythms and the main 3 keys of chords, you're now equipped to learn to play along with any tune in a major key from within the kind of main Celtic rhythms. So that takes me on to tip number 5. And tip number 5 is this: keep it simple, strummer. Go and play along with as many people as you can, but to begin with, just play along with tunes that are in keys that you're confident in. And if you ask other musicians what key is this tune in, they will probably gladly tell you. If you go to a session and you're a guitarist there, they'll probably shout out the keys to you before you've even asked. Once you know what chords 1, 4 and 5 are for the key that you're in, just practice going along with the tune and just try and fit them in the right places. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong quietly, and people will probably tell you roughly where they go. If there's another guitarist, you can follow them. But if you are following another guitarist, try and follow them by ear. If you can persuade yourself to do it, shut your eyes and listen to the chords and try and hear what chords they are playing. Because if you can get the feeling of chord 1, 4 and 5 and how they sound related to each other, that will set you in really good stead for picking your chords just off the top of your head, listening to your ears. You can't analyse music by listening with your eyes. I don't know why people don't know this intuitively, but they don't seem to. If you watch another guitarist, you're always going to be a bit behind, whereas if you listen, you're taking that information straight in its original format and you're able to respond to that with the right chords. So try and listen to other guitarists and think, how do their chords feel and what does that mean that they're actually doing, and then respond to that by trying to mirror those chords yourself. When you're confident then that you can listen to a tune and put chords 1, 4 and 5 along with it in the right places, then you can start throwing in things like substitutions, little chord runs, chord scales, more jazzy chords, tetrads, things like that. If you don't know what any of those things are, don't worry at all. Nobody wants to listen to a super advanced guitar player showing off. What people want is a good quality, reliable rhythm instrument which backs up the tune, because at the end of the day, what people listen to Celtic music for is the melodies, not the backing. The backing just augments the melodies. But if you're playing the right chords, just very simple 1, 4 and 5 in the right places, you are doing a lot better than many guitarists out there. Finally then, if you'd like to find out more about ear training, as I've said, you can find lots of videos about that on the Folk Friend website. I suggest if you want to learn more about music theory, you check out my video in the card in the corner, which is all about the modes and how they work. That's a really good starting point to understand that before you start delving too far into picking chords. If you have enjoyed this video, you can do me an absolutely massive favour by hitting the little thumbs up down there. You could also hit the subscribe button while you're there as well. I release lots of free tutorials just like this one. There's one out every weekend. If you hit the bell next to it, you'll get a little notification when I post one of those. And if you're looking for a complete guide to backing Irish music on the guitar, then you can find my book linked at the end of this video, which shows you absolutely everything you need to know from being a complete beginner to backing along in sessions. So thank you very much for watching. My name's Nye and I'll see you all next weekend for another video.